I can only speak for myself, but paying it forward, it makes me feel good, especially this time of year. And that's kind of how I think of supporting Boise State Public Radio podcasts, paying it forward. That's because we don't require any money in order to listen to our podcast. You don't have to pay a fee to hear a locked episode. You don't have to subscribe to a feed in order to hear the podcast. You can listen and share to your heart's content free of charge. But it does cost money to make these things. And if you're able to pay it forward, between now and the end of the year, we would greatly appreciate your support. If you feel so inclined, if you feel so inspired, please go to boisestatepublicradio.org right now and click that blue donate button. Any amount, any frequency, it all helps the bottom line here at Boise State Public Radio. Thanks in advance for your support. And of course, thanks for listening.
Well, from the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. She was one of the most famous bears in the country, and she was known as Grizzly Bear 399. She was watched by millions of fans as she roamed the greater Yellowstone ecosystem with her cubs, becoming a popular roadside attraction for years. This grand old bear was hit by a car in October, leading to an outpouring of grief all around the country. And her death has raised questions about the future of grizzlies in the wild and how the growing number of humans living in their world are impacting all bears. So here to tell us more about Bear 399's life and death is journalist and blogger Rocky Barker. Rocky, it's always nice to have you on the show.
Good to talk to you, Gemma.
Okay, so Rocky, let's start with 399's life. When and where was she born?
She was born in Pilgrim Creek drainage in Grand Teton National Park in 1996. And so she was, I think, like 28 when she died. And 1996 was an interesting time. You know, grizzly bears were called endangered in 1975. And when I moved here in 1985, there were only about 200 left. But by the time we got to 96, there were more than 600 bears. And, you know, it really had been a really remarkable recovery program. They actually had written the recovery plan in the early 90s, and they were trying to work their way towards delisting. But what was interesting for me as a reporter was grizzly bear, like bear jams, used to be looked at as a terrible problem. Do you remember back in the day, way back there, people didn't want bears and people to mix because bears would get habituated. They would start eating human food, and then they'd get aggressive and they'd get into problems. But as time went on, once they filled up all of Yellowstone and Grand Teton's habitat, all the big old male bears got all the best habitat, and female bears like 399 and subadult males had to take the less quality habitat, which was near roads. And so almost all of those bears got at least mildly habituated. And it took, and some managers said, instead of just killing all these bears or moving them out, you know, let's manage them and the people. And they were able to do it. And I watched them do it in different places. But 399 became, you know, the queen. She was the one who really had it figured. She had all of her children there. At one time, she had 4 cubs. And, you know, like you said, millions of people, including me, got to watch her in Grand Teton National Park, you know, going about her business when we're right there. It was pretty remarkable.
So, Rocky, she was radio collared, and this is how she was able to be tracked. And you mentioned at one point she had 4 cubs, but do we know how many cubs that she had over the years?
You know, I'm sorry, I was trying to come up with that number, but I would say it was dozens. And,
okay.
Because 28 years, the thing about bears is they are not really fecund. They can't have a lot of. They usually have cubs every other year, because the yearlings stay with them for a year. So they can have a few, but that's part of the challenge for managing bears is that unlike wolves who have lots of pups, they don't have lots of cubs.
So, Rocky, I want to talk about October when Bear 399 was hit by a car. I'm curious about what happened, and then let's talk about what this says about the future of bears, in this habitat and in these corridors.
Well, the area that she was hit was the Snake River Canyon south east of Jackson Hole, and that for her that was a part of her larger habitat, and while that was part of the problem in terms of managing her, because at times she even showed up in Jackson, and here she was in an area south of Jackson, and apparently, as I understand it, she was on a carcass of another animal she was feeding, and she had a cub. And my understanding was that the driver of the car was trying to avoid the cub when they hit her.
So, Rocky, with just a couple minutes, we have about 2 minutes left. What should all of us be doing, to help bears survive and thrive and keep them in the wild? Because as you mentioned at the top of our conversation, we've moved into their habitat.
Well, I think that's part of the attitude I want to get people to understand. So many people think they're coming up here, especially those of us in Idaho. We think, well, there's not bears here. Well, in fact, there are bears here. They're not just in eastern Idaho. There are bears in central Idaho. Good bear habitat includes a lot of our central Idaho habitat. And the thing that's happening with bears is they are moving out of places that we never thought they were going to be 30 years ago when we wrote the management plan. So I'd like to see us rewrite a management plan, reopen the discussion about bears so that we all think about bears in our backyard and welcome them, but also, live our lives so that we don't get into trouble with them. And we can do that by controlling garbage and other and animals and other things. So it's there, but we have to make space for them.
Well, Rocky, as always, we so appreciate you coming on and talking with us. We've been speaking with journalist and blogger Rocky Barker about the life and the death and, frankly, the consequences of the death of Grizzly Bear 399. We will make sure to put a link to Rocky's blog post on Bear 399 on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. This is the Idaho Matters podcast. I'm Gemma Gaudet.
If you like podcasts like this, explore more from the Boise State Public Radio podcast family. There you'll find a mix of daily news, Idaho voices, and in-depth series on a wide range of topics. I'm talking wild horses, political scandals, sustainable ranching, and militia groups in a post-January 6th world. Wherever you get your podcasts, just search Boise State Public Radio to find what Idaho's NPR station has in store for you.